It is Tuesday, May 28th, and the Splash Zone is back in your life. I'm Matt Modi, and I have 3 NBA player props to lock in for tonight's NBA betting slate. So I am recording this the morning of the game. None of this night before stuff, but we have Mavericks and Timberwolves game for tonight. I'm actually going to have 3 player props to lock in for this game. Of course, before we can get into those picks, we do have to do a recap. So I'm going to go ahead and recap Sunday and Monday because that was the last time that you saw me. I didn't have a video for yesterday's game, but I did give out picks. And it was a pretty good weekend overall. So between Sunday and Monday, I gave out 4 picks total. We got 3 of those 4 picks to cash. We were up about 1.7 units over the past 2 days. We went 2-0 on Sunday's game. This actual series, Mavericks Timberwolves game 3, we went 2-0 on our 2 plays. And then for last night's game between the Pacers and the Celtics, we went 1-1. So overall, things have started to go pretty well for me after a pretty hit or miss beginning to the playoffs. I think we've been green 4 out of the last 6 days, something like that. We're up over 5 units in that stretch as well. So it's been very, very good over the past week. Let's hope we can keep it going tonight. And that brings our entire profits, if we're looking at the entire season, we are up about 114 units, a little bit over 114 units. And then on the playoffs specifically, we are up about 6 units total, just below 6 units total. So again, it has been pretty good recently after very hit or miss to start the playoffs. It felt like we would have 3 good days, then 2 down days. Now, again, we've been up a decent amount over the last week or so hopefully we can keep that going. If you are new to my channel, I would appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button for this specific video. If you could like, comment. I love reading through all the comments. And then if you're interested in having all of my plays sent to you, just check out the Dub Club. It's $5 a month. Link to that is all over the YouTube video. But that's enough of that. Let's get into these bangers, starting with Anthony Edwards over 7.5 first quarter points. So one of the plays that we got right on Sunday, we got both of our plays right on Sunday. One of those was Anthony Edwards over his first quarter point prop. I'm going to go ahead and take that once again tonight. So we cashed this in game 3, and I actually feel comfortable going right back to it for essentially the same price, right? Like we got over 7.5 last game. I'm taking over 7.5 this game as well. I think that we are getting a little bit of a discount on his first quarter point prop, and I understand why, right? Like Anthony Edwards has struggled from a scoring perspective basically this entire series, all 3 games of this series. And he struggled towards the end of the Nuggets series as well. After that game 3 explosion where he scored over 40 points against the Nuggets, he has yet to score 28 points in a game, and his over-under for this game is 27.5. So I think what the books are doing is they're seeing that Anthony Edwards has struggled to score over the entire game. They're seeing the fact that his over-under for this game is at 27.5, and they're just dividing that by 4 and then just giving us a little bit plus odds because that's just basically how the math works out when you divide his over-under by 4. But in that same span, so he hasn't scored, as I mentioned, 28 or more points in 6 straight games. He has gone over 7.5 first quarter points in 4 of those 6 games, right? And he's done that in all 3 games this series as well. And I just really don't think that the books are adjusting because that's how they price these first quarter props. They just divide the full quarter or full game by 4. And you can find some really good value on players like Anthony Edwards, who scores more points in the first quarter relative to the rest of the game. So because of the fact that he hasn't hit 28 points in any game this last 6 games, any game this season, they're pricing it, dividing that by 4, pricing it at 7.5 with the over for plus money. We're getting it at a really, really good price. And the nice thing about Anthony Edwards and his first quarter point prop, there are a bunch of reasons why it's been such a moneymaker. I wish I was on it earlier, to be honest with you. But there are a couple of reasons why it's been such a moneymaker. Number 1, he plays all 12 minutes. You can rely on his minutes in the first quarter. He's going to play all 12. He's played all 12 minutes in 9 of the last 10 games of these playoffs. The one game he didn't play, he played 11, was just subbed out 1 minute early. But for all intents and purposes, especially in a literal do-or-die game for the Timberwolves, he's probably going to play all 12 minutes. And if you look at the matchup, the reason why that Anthony Edwards, his scoring has been so far down this series, number 1, he's just been tired, right? You see him in the fourth quarter, his hands are on his knees, he's gassed, he just doesn't have the energy over the course of a full game. Well, that's not a problem in the first quarter. He comes out gangbusters in the first quarter. Part of the reason why he's been able to score so much is because he just has his legs under him and he's not tired. And then also, part of the reason that he hasn't been able to score is the Mavericks defense has been awesome. I don't want to take anything away from the Mavericks defense, but part of their awesome defense has to do with their rim protection between Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. Well, guess what? Derek Lively is out for this game. So they're going to have some minutes where Gafford is playing with Anthony Edwards in that first quarter, but they're also going to have minutes when Gafford is out. And the Mavericks really don't have any rim protection when Daniel Gafford is going to be out of this game in game 4. And that really should open things up for Anthony Edwards, right? Like the reason why the Mavericks defense has been so good is because they have the athleticism to hang with him on the perimeter, and that Derek Jones Jr. has been a great defender on him. And when Ant is able to drive to the rim against the Suns, against the Nuggets, they didn't have any rim protection, right? Jokic, Nurkic, they're not protecting the rim. Lively and Gafford are. So in the minutes that Gafford is off the floor, Ant should have a much easier time scoring at the rim. And about half of those minutes will be in the first quarter, right? 6 of the 12 should be without Daniel Gafford, depending on how the Mavericks do their rotations. So I really, really like this Anthony Edwards prop. I think getting it for plus money is a really good price at plus 110. We'll gladly take advantage of it. That's our first play. Next up, same game. I'm taking Kyle Anderson over 5.5 points, plus 110 odds at bet 365. So it's rare that you see me go with a nasty boy like Kyle Anderson, someone that doesn't play a ton of minutes. And this also admittedly does go against my normal strategy of fading recent results. This is another situation where I don't really think the books have caught on yet to Kyle Anderson, right? Like, and again, similar to Anthony Edwards, I get why it's priced the way it is. It's priced at 5.5 because Slow-Mo, which for those of you who don't know, that's his nickname. He was horrible in the Nuggets series. He basically played his way out of the rotation. And in general, if you look at the playoffs, in the entire playoffs, so he's played 13 games. The Nuggets have, or excuse me, the Timberwolves have played 14. He didn't play in one of them. Kyle Anderson has played in 13 games of these playoffs. 3 of them have been in this Mavericks series. So heading in to the Mavericks series, he had played 10 games. He only went over 5.5 points in 1 of those 10 games. He was literally 1 for 10. The only game that he went over heading into the series was the only game against the Nuggets in which he played more than 20 minutes. So obviously, yeah, the more time he's on the court, the more he's probably going to score. But we see this happen with rotation players all the time. One series, a rotation player is going to play his way off the court. It's just not his series. That has not been the case with Kyle Anderson in this Maverick series. It's been the opposite, right? He's found his role. He's played his way into the rotation, and he's getting a solid 20 minutes where, yeah, 20 minutes, it's not a ton of playing time. 6 points also isn't a lot either. And sure, you can say that, well, they're playing him more minutes, but the Timberwolves are down 3-0. How are you saying that this is working? They're not down 3-0 because of Kyle Anderson. They're down 3-0 because Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns haven't been able to score. He's like, as I mentioned, Kyle Anderson is averaging about 20 minutes per game in this series. And more importantly, he scored 6 or more points in all 3 games as well. He has a pretty valuable scoring ability to score via the floater. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the rim protection of the Mavericks has been very, very good. Well, Kyle Anderson, he isn't even capable of getting to the rim because he's so slow, but he has a really good floater game, right? He can slowly break down the defense and score via the floater. That's been pretty important because, as I mentioned, the Mavs have clamped down any scoring at the rim, any scoring in the restricted area. That's why you see guys like Mike Conley be pretty valuable for the Timberwolves as well, because he can also score in the floater. And Kyle Anderson, his defense is mildly valuable. He doesn't move athletically by any means, but he's a smart defender. He knows where to position his body, and he's at least going to make the shot difficult for whoever he's guarding. Even if it's Kyrie, who has like 90% the speed over Kyle Anderson, he can move his feet and he can at least make it a little bit difficult, or he can funnel the defense his defender into the next guy and have a rotation play from there. So I do think that Kyle Anderson, you can probably rely on him to get another 20 minutes in this game. He'll probably make 3 floaters, cashing this over for us as our second play. Last up, third and final pick of the video. This is going to be a half unit play. So put a half unit on this one. Karl-Anthony Towns, 3+ made 3-pointers, plus 185 odds at FanDuel. Now I get it. This one is the absolute fade of recent results. You are going to hate this one. Watching this video, you probably put Karl-Anthony Towns on your do not bet list. You're not going to touch it. I totally understand that. And I'm not going to sit here for 1 second and argue that Karl-Anthony Towns has been anything other than horrific in this playoff series. He's been horrible basically in all 3 games against the Mavericks. He got benched in game 2. He's been bad. I'm not going to say anything other than that. What we are doing here is we are betting on his three-point volume, which has been pretty consistent even as he's struggled. And we're betting for that shooting regression to swing back to the mean, right? He's a good shooter in his career who's shot horribly in these playoffs, or in this series, I should say. He's been generally pretty good in the playoffs, but this series he's been terrible. On the series, he's averaging over 7 3-point attempts per game. In game 1, he attempted 9. In game 2, he only attempted 5. That was the weird game in which he got benched. He didn't play at all, really, in the fourth quarter. He only played 26 minutes. But the other 2 games of this series, he played 35 minutes, had his normal workload. That happened in game 3 as well. He played 38 minutes in game 3, so I'm expecting another 35-plus minutes in this one. And in game 3, he attempted 8 3-pointers. Now, he didn't make any of those 8 3-pointers. He was legitimately 0 of 8 from 3-point range. I'm betting that's going to normalize, that he is not going to continue to shoot as poorly as he has through these 3 games. And I totally understand Cat is a very easy target to roast, right? He's soft, he's a fraud, whatever that may be. I get it. But he's had good games in these playoffs, and he's had good games in important playoff games. Like game 7 against the Nuggets. Sure, he didn't make 3 3-pointers. He was legitimately awesome in that game 7 against the Nuggets. They don't win that game if it wasn't for Karl-Anthony Towns showing up the way he did. If you remember that game 7, Ant really struggled, especially in the first half. I mean, they were down by 20 in the first half, but Cat kept them afloat when Ant was still trying to figure it out. And another reason why I like Karl-Anthony Towns shooting in this game is that it's not like all of his 3-pointers that he's been attempting are tightly contested, right? Over half of Karl-Anthony Towns' 3-point attempts in this specific series, just these 3 games, have been considered wide open by NBA.com's standards. Now, NBA.com defines wide open as a 6+ feet of space. Legitimately over half of his 3-point attempts have been considered wide open, and Cat is shooting 27% on those 3-point attempts. That's terrible. That's even more terrible. Let me put that into context for you. So if you look at the regular season, which I get the playoffs are different, and we'll get there. In the regular season, Karl-Anthony Towns shot 48.7% on wide open 3-pointers. Did he have a stretch of 3 games where he probably shot like crap? He probably did. Over the course of a season, he was almost 50% on wide open 3-pointers. Now, I know what your next argument is. Okay, well, the playoffs are different. I agree. Even with these 3 games taken into account, I'm not taking them out of the record. If you look at these entire playoffs, right, this whole playoff run for the Timberwolves, Karl-Anthony Towns is shooting over 40% on wide open 3-pointers. How much better do you think that is when you take out these 3 games? Probably close to his average of 48% from as a wide open 3-point shooter. So what's happening here is that in 3 very high profile games, Karl-Anthony Towns is going through a horrible shooting slump. Karl-Anthony Towns normally is a knockdown shooter, and the prediction here is that those shooting splits are going to normalize. I think he's going to have a game, he's going to go 5 of 7, 6 of 8 from 3-point range. Hopefully that is today. If not, there might not be a next game for the Timberwolves, and he won't have an option to get out of this slump. But all we're doing here is we're betting on a good shooter to reverse back to the mean and how bad his shooting has been. And maybe he's just not built for the bright lights. Maybe he's a soft, he's fraud, whatever you want to call it. But I've seen him show up in some games in these playoffs, and in a really important game 7, and he's a good shooter who's getting the attempts. Over half of them are wide open. That's what we're betting on here, is that normalizing. So let's hope that comes through for us. It would be a very juicy play to hit Karl-Anthony Towns 3+ made 3-pointers. And then I also have an underdog entry for you guys as well. I put that on the screen here. 3 legs. I put a quarter unit on these 3 legs. The first one is going to be Anthony Edwards over 32.5 points plus rebounds. To be honest with you, I do like his rebounds individually. It's priced at 6.5, but I didn't want to have 2 overs on Anthony Edwards. So what I decided to do was just put his points plus rebounds in the underdog slip. The next leg, the Luka under 3.5 made 3-pointers. Admittedly, that's going to be scary because he's made 5 in each of the last 2 games, and his shooting has been better since that horrible slump he was in the Clippers and Thunder series. But we're just fading recent results here. He made 5 each of the last 2 games. It's going to normalize in the other way, kind of the opposite of Karl-Anthony Towns. And then the Gafford rebounds one is really just the play on his minutes, his usage being up. Usage meaning rebound opportunities and stuff, not literal usage by the definition. With Derek Lively off the floor, In these playoffs with Derek Lively off the floor, he's averaging almost 7 more rebounds per 36 minutes. He's really good rebound per minute. We'll have to see what his minutes look like without Derek Lively, but I think the over 7.5 is a really good number. 0.25 units, a quarter unit on this one. It's equivalent of plus 500 odds, so I'd love to get this to cash as we've been snake bitten on these Underdog entries. And if you want to sign up for Underdog, I would appreciate it if you did using my link because that helps me out a ton. But that is all we got. 3 bangers plus an Underdog entry for you guys to lock in. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe. Make sure to check out the Dub Club if you are interested. I appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.